Hey everybody, I'm Mike with MK Outdoor Journal, and this is The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. So uncover your keyboard and fire up your fingers. It's time to join the conversation. Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Mike, and you are watching and listening to The Right of the People. Let me know if there's some kind of technical diddly going on out there, folks. I need to know if that's happening. Let's see. Good. My chat just came up. So awesome. As you can see, we got no panel tonight. That's kind of going to be the shape of things to come. Most of the time, we're not going to have a panel. It's just kind of going to be me and you. I want to fly on my own, man. It's time to kick the little bird out of the nest. So we'll see how this goes. I may end up bringing in one person to manage the comments and whatnot eventually. We'll see how this goes. Speaking of comments, if you have something to say and you're not here live, sound off in the comments below. If you happen to not be watching this, if you happen to not be able to watch the entire thing on YouTube, you can check it out in podcast format on Podbean, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and I think Google Listen, and one or two other podcast platforms. So go check that out. There should be links in the description below for that. Let me go ahead out to the chatteroo and say hi. We got Tactical Fud in the house. How you doing, Buck? Kingpin's out there. Mountain View. M. Gabriel. Tactical Fud said, I asked Maury Povich if Keith Olbermann was a moron. The results came back 99.9% moron. LOL. Yeah, don't doubt that. Clint Torres is in the house. Remember, if it's just me and you, will there be slow dancing? Maybe. If I'm asked nicely enough. Possibly. That's from DM Foss, by the way. So, yeah. Hopefully, Two Live Moose says slow hands at DM Foss. Kingpin is out there saying hi to folks. Glad to see everybody here. It's good to be back, I hadn't been doing the show for a while. I kind of took a hiatus. An even longer hiatus from putting it out in podcast format, but because that entails me performing the onerous task of downloading it, editing it, converting it from WAV to MP3, and then putting it out on the podcast platforms, right? So tough. I hadn't been doing that for a while. Matter of fact, it was a year since the last time I'd done that, but now it's back out in podcast, and you'll be able to catch it in the podcast format about an hour after the broadcast tonight. As I'm have instituted a hard and fast rule with myself because I want to make sure it gets done, that it's going to happen as soon as I get done with the broadcast. So we'll try to, better than a low hiatus. That's what M. Gabriel says. Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, changes coming to the podcast, like I said, to the matter of fact, I'm trying to refer to it to myself instead of a live stream as a podcast, because I want to get myself into that mindset that this is in fact a podcast. Content isn't going to change much. I know we kind of had this conversation last week, but there might have been some people, not last week, because last week was the Super Bowl, but, week before last, but some people might not have caught it. So there are changes coming. As I said, this just being me without a panel for most broadcasts is one of them. The other is trying to tone down the politics a little bit, at least the way I present it. We're still going to talk about Second Amendment related news, politics, and current events. We're still going to do the Moron of the Week, and we're still going to do the self-defense shout-outs. Just, I'm trying to restrain my natural impulses to have a friggin' conniption on air about the bullcrap these people pull. So, yeah. Try to make it a little bit more brand friendly, because eventually I would like to attract sponsors to this dumpster fire. That would be nice. I make no bones about it, folks. This ain't exactly free to produce and put out, as any of you out there who puts out a live stream and then puts it out in podcast, or even if you don't put it out in podcast, you still have to put forth some money and time and effort to do this. So I'd like to have it pay for itself. That would be great. Okay. Pardon me, please. I had to take myself a little drinky drink. Just talking like this tends to make the throat a little dry. Got some more folks trickling in. We got Giz or Gary out there. What's up, Giz? Anyone else? If you're out there, folks, and you haven't said anything, sound off in the chat. That way I can say hello to you. I would like to say hi and acknowledge the fact that you're here. Because remember, folks, one reason I produce this as a live stream and then take all the audio and stuff from that to put out as a podcast is I like to have this two-way conversation with you. I don't want to just be me talking and that's it. I like the interaction with you guys. M. Gabriel says, I want to suggest Samson YouTube channel. What about us? If anyone needs a nice rant. There you go. Sunday mornings just aren't the same. Oh, you're not doing the Sunday morning chat anymore, Giz. Figured I'm going to retire, so I'm going to sleep in on Sundays, right? Good for you. DM Foss says, feels like something's missing on Sunday mornings. Clint says, a good rant is a beautiful thing. Yes, it is, and you'll still hear a rant or two every once in a while, but I'm trying to moderate myself a little bit, even though it's hard when they do stuff like this. You know, if you don't live under a rock, for a brief moment you heard about this shooting spree that happened at MSU, at Michigan State. A 43-year-old African-American man went in for not much of a reason that anyone can discern, with a couple 9mm handguns, and started shooting up the place, which of course is a gun-free zone because we can't have people able to defend themselves. I mean, God, then what would they need government for, right? Let's go to this piece from the AP. Okay, yes, your pop-up. I don't want it. I don't want the Morning Wire. AP News by Joey Capoletti and Mike Householder from February 14th. Police seek motive of gunman who killed 3 at Michigan State. East Lansing, Michigan. The 43-year-old gunman who killed 3 students and wounded 5 others at Michigan State University had no apparent connection to the campus, police said Tuesday, as they searched for a motive for the shootings that terrified the community for hours. The investigators were sorting out why, and I'm not going to say his name, why this knucklehead fired inside an academic building and the student union just before 8:30 p.m. Monday. An hours-long lockdown at the campus in East Lansing ended when he killed himself miles away while being confronted by police. Usually these folks do off themselves when they're confronted with any resistance. The shooting happened the day before the 5th anniversary of the Parkland, Florida school shooting that killed 17 and is the latest in what has become a deadly new year in the U.S. If you listen to the lamestream media and the sources they're citing, like the Gun Violence Archive, they say that there have been 73 mass shootings in the U.S. since the start of this year already. However, they're putting in stuff like gang shootings in that, so I'm pretty skeptical about their methodology. I'm not sure I accept their numbers. We have to do something to stop the gun violence that's ripping apart our communities, President Joe Biden said in a speech Tuesday, mentioning Michigan State. Meanwhile, a school district in Ewing Township, New Jersey, closed for the day after investigators said that the jerkwad who lived in the area years ago had a note in his pocket indicating a threat to schools there. but it was determined there was no credible threat, local police said later in a statement shared by the superintendent. The dead and injured in the gunfire at Berkey Hall and the MSU Union, a popular place to eat and study, were all Michigan State students. 5 remained in critical condition at Sparrow Hospital, said Dr. Denny Martin, who fought back tears during a news conference Tuesday. We have absolutely no idea what the motive was, said Chris Rosman, Deputy Chief of Campus Police, adding that Jerky McJerkface of Lansing was not a student or Michigan State employee. This is still fluid, Rosman said. There are still crime scenes that are being processed, and we are still in the process of putting together the pieces to try to understand what happened. The dead were all from the Detroit area. 2 graduated from separate high schools in the Grosse Pointe district. Brian Fraser, president of Phi Delta Theta fraternity, and Ariel Anderson, Alexandria Werner, a graduate of Clawson High School in another Detroit suburb, also died. If you knew her, you loved her, and we will forever remember the lasting impact she's had on all of us, Clawson Superintendent Billy Schellenberger said in an email to families. The shootings took place in an area of older, stately buildings on the northern edge of the Michigan State campus, one of the nation's largest at 5,200 acres. Just across busy Grand River Avenue lies East Lansing's downtown, teeming with restaurants, bars, and shops. Our Spartan community is reeling today, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Michigan State graduate, said at the morning briefing. Biden pledged his support during a phone call, she said. We mourn the loss of beautiful souls today and pray for those who are continuing to fight for their lives. Another place that is supposed to be about community and togetherness is shattered by bullets and bloodshed, Whitmer said. Michigan State has about 50,000 students, including 19,000 who live on campus. As hundreds of officers scoured the campus about 90 miles northwest of Detroit, students hid where they could Monday night. So, and it goes into some students telling their story of what they did that night and what happened. So, at first, the media was trying to push this narrative, and the usual suspects tried to jump on it. Our sniffer-in-chief used it to call for an assault weapons ban, which we'll talk more about later. And Governor Whitmer of Michigan used it to, call for more gun control, as did a bunch of other anti-gun leftist wackos. Then reports started coming in that he didn't use an assault weapon, quote unquote, which is a made-up term. You guys all know this. He used a couple 9mm pistols, handguns, which is okay because remember the State of the Union address, President Sniffy mentioned semi-automatic handguns twice just seconds before calling for a ban on assault weapons, as if trying to equate the two. Of course, since assault weapons is a made-up term, I guess they can expand it to include handguns. Why not? It's not like it means anything real anyhow, other than whatever they want it to at that particular time, right? Then it came out that this was an African-American individual, and the media tends not to hype shootings committed by African-Americans for some reason. So that was another point against it as to why, after a day or two, this narrative died. But then there was shootings in Missouri and Georgia, and they're still getting to try to bang this drum. Again, those shootings kind of died out, no pun intended, for real this time. Kind of died off and fell off the radar because, they look like they're gang-related criminal shootings. Just like the crime stuff that always happens in Chicago every weekend. As a matter of fact, more people were killed in Chicago than were wounded in the Michigan State shooting this weekend by far. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and check this just to check it, because I want to see if that assertion is right. I have not checked this yet. So let's go to heyjackass.com, because heyjackass.com tracks this stuff in Chicago. So let's see. Last week, 8 shot and killed, 34 shot and wounded, total 42 shot, 9 total homicides. Just in February to date, shot and killed 22, shot and wounded 86, total shot 108, total homicides 24. Year to date, shot and killed 63, shot and wounded 252, total shot 315, total homicides 68. And I've said this before, and I know other pundits have said this before, if these people really gave a damn about curbing violence, they would be saying something about what happens in Chicago every single day. But they don't. And frankly, they can't, because Chicago doesn't fit their narrative. Chicago, as a matter of fact, is an argument against the policies they want to impose on you. Chicago has been run by Democrats forever. It has some of the strictest gun control in the country, and it's a complete, total, and utter failure. So they can't point to it. They kind of sweep that under the rug while trying to hype up everything else that they can that fits within our nice, neat little narrative. Let's go out to the chat and see what's going on out there. I have not looked at the chat lately. Let's see. What are y'all talking about out there? Let me go back up here. Everybody saying how Gary's awesome. So, good. No such things as gun violence. Exactly, Kingpin. You've been paying attention. I've been saying that forever. And I keep threatening to write an article about it. I really have to find a time and make, well, no, let me rephrase that. I have to make the time to write that article and make this video, because you're absolutely right. Gun violence is a myth. Gun violence does not exist. Gun violence is a made-up thing used to influence and brainwash you. Well, not you in particular, I guess, since those of you who are watching this show are pretty awake and aware of what's going on. But I'm talking about you as in the public in general. Vanessa says, no, start beheading criminals. A guillotine should do just fine. SCOTUS will have something to say by end of the year. Clint Torres says, wait a second. What's someone doing with a gun in a no-gun zone? Didn't he know that was a no-no? Exactly. Ozzy's in the house. G-Webs is out there. They didn't see the sign, Clint. Kingpin says, 9mm, think of all the blown out lungs. Clint says, as soon as the guy's picture started going around, the story disappeared. And Gabriel says, it's a giant bottle of cough syrup. No, it's actually a bottle of iced tea. Peach iced tea, even. It's that Weiler's peach iced tea drink packets. I tend to mix some of that up in a bottle and drink it because, well, I like it. Tastes good. Kingpin says Maryland has been using assault pistols since 2013 at least. Well, you know, Maryland likes to make crap like that up too. And Gabriel says it was Mississippi, not Missouri. Thank you very much for the correction. Gunpowder Beauty is in the house. Hello. G-Web says, pro tip, while you drive, dictate into a phone, write an email to yourself, then you have most of your article written, edited up, and you are set. Brilliant! I might have to do that on the way to work tomorrow. Ozzy says, violent criminals are the problem. Exactly. Violent criminals absolutely are the problem. Well, part of the problem. They are actually a symptom of the real problem, which is mismanagement and botched leadership and failed social policies that create the conditions for violent criminals. But again, that's certainly not what our lords and masters want us to see and want us to hear. They don't want us to know about that because, that threatens their control, their power. Because remember, folks, gun control is never about the gun. It's always about control. But yeah, gun-free zone, Michigan State. Because allowing people to defend themselves is just barbaric, and we can't have that because it threatens our master's control over us. And this was proven by some brainwashed drones who lick their master's boots as they roll around on their backs and expose their tummies and throats to them. This is from Breitbart from February 16th. MSU students paint over message on campus rock pleading, allow us to defend ourselves after mass shooting. On Wednesday morning, Michigan State University's rock on Farm Lane has been painted with the message, allow us to defend ourselves and carry on campus. The rock is a place of expression for the MSU community. State News reported that sociology doctoral student Kitty Groller and chemistry junior Riley Warner saw the plea for policy changes to allow campus carry for self-defense and decided to cover it up. Yes, folks, in true typical anti-gun liberal fashion, squash any dissent to our opinion. The paper quoted Warner saying, I woke up this morning and heard about the rock being painted over, and I understand that students are grieving, and we all grieve in different ways, but you can't force someone else to grieve in your way. Tradition is to not paint over it, but tradition doesn't matter right now. What matters is our students grieving and taking their time, and you imposing your way of grieving on somebody. I mean, you contradict yourself and point out your own damn hypocrisy when you say that, you can't force someone to grieve in your way, but I'm going to force these people to grieve in my way because, I don't agree with them, so we can't allow that message to be sent. State News reporter Devin Anderson Torres posted video of Groller and Warner covering up the plea for the ability to carry on campus for self-defense. You go, girls. You're doing good work there. That's just awesome. You are so, you are, man. You fight that social justice fight. The Washington Post noted that while there have been many calls for gun control following the Monday night MSU attack, there have been voices pointing to other solutions. In the hours and days after the shooting, dozens of users argued that armed students or faculty would have stopped the shooter. After the rock, an MSU landmark constantly repainted with messages was colored with a pro-gun message, allow us to defend ourselves and carry on campus. There was a flurry of posts. The Post pointed out that a student on the social... Terrible. Come on, Breitbart. Get that edited right. The Post pointed out that a student on the social media outlet Yik Yak, writing in support of the pro-self-defense message on the rock, wrote, gun-free zones are the most unsafe places in this country. That's what the rock's current message is getting at. Let us carry to protect ourselves and you. Another student on Yik Yak wrote, police are minutes away when seconds count. But apparently, do-gooders are right there to squash any dissent to the narrative and destroy anything that doesn't agree with the approved message that your masters want to hear. So roll over, girls. Make sure you lick those boots nicely and wiggle your whole body when you're wagging your tail, because that looks cuter, and your masters will pet you harder and maybe give you a little treat. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that that was just simply a counter exercise of free speech, or do you think it was covering up and squashing dissent with the accepted narrative? Let me know out there in the chat and in the comments below. Let's see, what are they saying in the chat? Kingpin, all that is true. It starts back with the abuse of the language, i.e. gun violence, etc. Words are important. You know, you're absolutely right. Words are important, Kingpin. I actually have an article saved up to reference in the article I want to write about how the language you use influences your thinking. That's the entire way, the entire reason they've made up these words like gun violence and assault weapon and assault pistol and all of that garbage, fully semi-automatic and all of that trash. It's in an effort to brainwash you because they know that the language you use influences your thought. That's why with the whole PC movement, that's what it is. The entire wokeist garbage that they want to cram down our throats. That's why they do the things they do with our language. You are spot on, sir. Chris from the 740 in the house, how you doing? They love to cry out while they hit you, says Kingpin. Yes, language does lead to indoctrination, Warsaw, which, by the way, hi, how you doing? So we have that, folks. You know, first they start to try to push that narrative. They discover that it's not working right, and that the story doesn't quite fit the narrative. So they move on to squashing any dissent about what their preferred message is. And then they move on because, you know, they still use whatever they can to try to push for gun control. This is another piece from Breitbart. Michigan AG. We need gun control and can't solve shootings by bringing strict charges against gun criminals because there are so many. This one almost made it into Moron of the Week, folks, just by the way, just to let you know how dumb, I'll just say it, how asinine this lady's statements are. On Wednesday's PBS NewsHour, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, Democrat, rejected arguments that forcing prosecutors to see through felony firearms charges, in other words, to actually prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, would help prevent mass shootings like the Michigan State University shooting, whose perpetrator was originally charged with a felony gun crime. He was carrying concealed without a license, which shouldn't be a crime, but apparently is in Michigan. Because so many people illegally carry guns in the state that if everyone who did so was incarcerated, they'd have to build more prisons. And so it's not a matter of incarcerating our way through this problem. It's a matter of making guns less accessible and available to people. So since criminals won't obey the law, we have to take away the rights of law-abiding citizens. And then, once we take the law-abiding citizens' rights, the criminals are just magically going to fall in line and stop carrying guns that they shouldn't have anyway. And our law-abiding citizens are just going to be okay because we will suddenly have utopia. Co-host Anna Nawaz asked, I should note that State Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt has said one of the things to do is to address root causes. He doesn't believe any of these bills would do that. And he says, look, if prosecutors were forced to see through the convictions on the gun violations, as would have been the case in the previous felony charge with this gunman, that is one way, he says, it would address the root cause and prevent these from happening. Do you agree with that? Nessel responded, no, I think he's absolutely false. And here's why I say that. Carrying a concealed weapon is the crime that this individual, Mr. McJerkface, was originally charged with. In Michigan, that's technically a 5-year felony. But our guidelines in Michigan really don't even allow someone to spend much time at all in jail unless they have many previous offenses. Then how about you change the frickin' sentencing guidelines? And as far as I know, this was a first-time weapons-related offense for this individual. That is such a common crime here that if we were to lock up everyone who illegally carried a gun, we'd have to build more prisons. So to me, it's not a matter of incarcerating our way through this problem. It's a matter of making guns less accessible and available to people. Well, here. How about we approach it the other direction. Since everybody's already carrying a gun, why not decriminalize carrying the gun? You know, allow people to exercise their naturally occurring, God-given, constitutionally protected freaking rights. Instead of, let's go ahead and restrict further the rights of the law-abiding because, you know, criminals aren't going to obey the law, so let's just make more laws and take stuff from people who ain't doing nothing wrong. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes more sense than that other thing, right? God, these people are so... I want to say they're stupid, but they're not stupid. That's the hell of it. They're not stupid. They're deliberately obtuse. They're deliberately doing this garbage. They're deliberately saying this garbage. They're deliberately perpetrating this garbage because Jack and Jill American are mostly, at least 51% of them, are freaking retarded, stupid, ignorant, willfully misinformed, apathetic, and don't give a damn about protecting their rights. Once again, folks, do you think I'm wrong? Sound off in the chat. Sound off in the comments. Let me know what you think. Oi, I can't stand this garbage. Also worried that the Isle train chemical spill spreading to other states. Mike, I'm not super worried about that. I'm like 30 miles away from that. I ain't worried. Certainly shouldn't be a felony, says Guns at Barbecue. No, it shouldn't. Shouldn't be illegal at all. Like what the Marine wrote as an expert witness in the California case. What a disgrace to the Marines. We're going to talk about that individual in a few minutes. G. Webb says people abused drugs at one time in the past, so the government made drugs illegal. Now people can't get drugs, and the issues have gone away thanks to the drug-free zones. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at that. Prohibition of anything just works. I mean, it worked for alcohol, right? Right? Worked for drugs, right? We don't have a drug problem in this country. People, you know, it's not legal to get drugs, so people don't do it. They can't. Yeah. Kingpin says, I think I'll open the only awesomeness zone. So, yeah, folks, let me know what you think down in the comments. If you're catching this on the replay, over in the chat. If you're not, send me an email if you'd like to Mike at MK Outdoor Journal, and let me know what you think. If you're checking this in the if you're checking this out on a podcast. Tactical Fud says you need somebody on your panel just to keep an eye on your blood pressure. I take medications for that. I'm good. Seriously, I take like 5 of them. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I should just I don't know. Hell, maybe I should just stop the whole. And really, the only solution for that is me to just stop doing this whole thing. That would be better for my blood pressure, but I ain't gonna do it. I've always said since I started this channel that if someone's going to, you know, do something, try and make a little bit of money off the Second Amendment, they should do whatever they can to fight for it. So this is what I can do. So this is what I'm going to do. I will use the First to defend the Second. It's kind of why I have that as the tagline for the show, right? Now, let's see. We're going to talk about more stuff. Oh yeah, there is some pushback on this garbage. Newsweek actually fact-checked the assertions of the gun banners. This is from bearingarms.com by Tom Knighton from February 19th. Newsweek fact-checks mass shooting claim. Anytime we experience a mass shooting, we start to hear a lot of people slinging statistics around on the internet. This phenomenon is worse on social media, particularly Twitter. Recently, someone claimed that mass shootings were 43% lower during the era of the assault weapon ban, and Newsweek, of all places, decided to fact-check the claim. A tweet posted by activist Mohammed Safa on February 15, 2023, which has been viewed more than 128,000 times, said, "Do you know that in 1994, Bill Clinton banned assault weapons and mass shooting deaths dropped by 43%? In 2004, the ban expired and mass shooting deaths shot up by 239%. The source of the claim on Twitter appears to be University of Massachusetts researcher Louis Claravas, who found that compared with the 10-year period before the ban, the number of people dying from mass shootings fell by 43% and increased 239% 10 years after. However, as Claravas told the Washington Post, he only assessed high fatality mass shootings and did not have comprehensive data on mass shootings that resulted in less than 6 killed. The Post was also provided with analysis that suggested per capita incidents of gun deaths did dip during the period. However, this data did not assess assault weapons in particular, and as mentioned in the article, there are other issues with it too. As Claveris stated, he had only counted shootings where the number of deaths was 6 or more. The definition of a mass shooting is contentious, but one metric regularly cited is any shooting where 4 or more victims had died. Looking only at statistics involving 6 or more victims would, in theory, narrow the number of incidents recorded. It should also be noted that the Post's analysis that gun deaths per capita dropped isn't shocking. We know that homicide rates were dropping before the assault weapon ban, dropped during, and continued dropping afterward, right up until the last few years, really. That suggests that the assault weapon ban played almost no role in that reduction. Newsweek also noted that Claveris' data only shows a correlation, not causation. That's an important point here because, as noted, other data show very different things. In fact, other studies have shown mass shootings really didn't drop during the era of the assault weapon ban, especially compared to what we saw beforehand. But activists tout Claveris and his research for one very simple reason. It's because they like the conclusion. Who cares how he defines the criteria so long as the narrative is advanced? What does it matter so long as his research can be used to advance gun control causes? Further, even if mass shooting fatalities are up, there are some points that aren't in the research. For example, what many might term the era of the mass shooting didn't start until 1999, during the assault weapon ban, when Columbine happened. It wasn't the first mass shooting, but that has been argued to be when the trend in mass shootings really got going. So it stands to reason that as mass shootings continue, such killers might claim still more lives after the assault weapon ban than before it. So yeah, I'm not exactly swayed by the argument. So there you go, folks. They are, as should come as no surprise to anyone, they like to cherry pick what statistics they use, right? Kingpin says, what's a gun death? Lots of rust? Broken frame or slide? Yeah, right? That sounds about right. So, we also had an armed civilian recently stop a mass shooting. Kind of goes against everything that they believe in, right? All of their narrative that they like to say to us. Because this is a piece from Truth About Guns by Dan Zimmerman from February 18th. Narrative fail. Legally armed civilian shot El Paso mall shooter, preventing more casualties. It happened again. A civilian carrying a concealed firearm stopped a shooting in El Paso, Texas mall earlier this week. We know news like this will come as something of a shock to our friends in the civilian disarmament industrial complex, but who are we fooling? That's exactly why we wrote this. Anti-gunners love to claim that people who carry firearms don't use them to defend themselves or stop crimes. All evidence to the contrary. I mean, shoot, this little broadcast that I do every week shows you at least 3 instances where the good guy with a gun stops the bad guy. And it happens all the time. I could almost do an hour-long show on that. Don't use them to defend them or stop crimes. Pardon me. All evidence to the contrary. And they certainly don't stop active shooters in public areas. They know this to be true because they say so, which is all the proof they really need. What has us here at the Truth About Guns Central Command puzzled is how they reconcile their views with incidents such as what happened in Indiana when Eli Dickin pulled a concealed pistol and stopped a mass shooting in progress last summer. Or more recently, when something similar happened in El Paso when an argument, likely between rival gangs, escalated into a fight and then a shooting in a crowded shopping mall. Even the anti-gun stenographers or journalists at CNN have been forced to report that a civilian used his legally licensed gun to shoot and wound a suspect in a mall shooting in El Paso, Texas, that left 1 dead and 3 injured earlier this week, police said. Emmanuel Duran, 32, shot a 16-year-old who is believed to have carried out the shooting at the Cielo Vista Mall, spurring chaos and sending many patrons running in panic Wednesday evening, El Paso police said in a statement Friday night. As soon as the shooting ended, the 16-year-old suspect began to run and was pointing the gun towards the direction of bystanders, police said. As the suspect ran towards Duran and bystanders, Duran drew his handgun and shot the suspect. Ouch. Here's a statement issued last night by the El Paso Police Department describing what Mr. Duran, who had a Texas license to carry, did when confronted by a man with a gun. Let me go to this tweet. Try to get it up to something I can read. Goodness. Let's see. El Paso, Texas. The El Paso Police Department continues the investigation of the shooting that took place Wednesday at the Cielo Vista Mall. Investigators have learned that it was 5:05. That at 5:05, a confrontation ensued between 2 groups near the food court and in the second level. The first group consisted of 17-year-old Angeles Zaragoza, a 17-year-old Hispanic male who is seriously injured, a 17-year-old Hispanic female, a 16-year-old Hispanic male, a 14-year-old Hispanic male, and a 14-year-old Hispanic female. The second group consisted of a 16-year-old male who has been identified as the shooter in this incident, a 20-year-old Hispanic male who was injured, a 17-year-old Hispanic male, and a 15-year-old Hispanic male. The confrontation between both groups escalated into a physical fight. As they fought, the 16-year-old suspect pulled out a handgun. The suspect fatally shot 17-year-old Angeles Zaragoza and seriously wounded a 17-year-old Hispanic male who was part of the first group. In the shooting, a 20-year-old Hispanic male of the second group was shot. As soon as the shooting ended, the 16-year-old suspect began to run and was pointing a gun towards the direction of bystanders, including 32-year-old Emmanuel Duran, a license to carry holder. As the suspect ran towards Duran and the bystanders, Duran drew his handgun and shot the suspect. At that time, 1 off-duty El Paso police officer arrived at the area of the shooting and together with Duran rendered aid to the 16-year-old suspect and the others that were injured. Investigators found that there were at least 2 other legally armed citizens in the area of where the shooting took place, but were not involved. The investigation continues and charges are pending against the 16-year-old suspect. The 16-year-old suspect was listed in stable condition. So that's what happened, folks. An unnamed wounded 16-year-old who used a stolen gun to kill 1 and injure 3 more was arrested. Duran helped the cop administer first aid, and the shooter was wounded. The cognitive dissonance experienced by the devoted homophobes at news like this has to be jarring and awfully difficult to deal with. Does smoke visibly trail from their ears? Do their little heads explode? We're actually quite concerned for their mental well-being. It can't be easy to absorb the reality of these incidents conflicting with what they've regularly told by all of the smartest people like the noted authorities like the New York Times, Chris Brown, and Ryan Busey. We just want to take a moment to assure them that, if they're having trouble coping, help is out there. It's true that guns prevent crimes and save lives every day in America, but that doesn't mean you should be ashamed, depressed, or suffer in silence. Please, if you're finding the reality of civilian gun ownership difficult to cope with, reach out and get the help you need. A little bit of smartassery there, but I like it. Let's see. What is going on in the chat, folks? Tell me what you think about this. About an armed citizen stopping a shooting. Again, sound off in the comments. Sound off in the chat. Gizzard was talking about what we were before. Look how well Prohibition worked. Let's see. Gabriel says, my wife particularly likes when you have one-armed defender story. So let's go on to our last thing I want to talk to you guys about. This one just made me, it set my blood pressure spiking when I read it, because this man is a damn disgrace, I think. And that is the Marine officer that was alluded to earlier in the chat. This is from Amaland by Mark Oliva from February 16th. Marine Colonel tarnishes 10 Eagles with false testimony. This guy almost made it into the Moron of the Week as well. Retired Marine Colonel Craig Tucker is throwing in his 25 years of Marine Corps service, combat experience, and military expertise to deny Californians their Second Amendment rights. The problem is, he's doing it on a bed of verifiably false allegations of what today's modern sporting rifle, MSR, is and isn't. He discloses that he's being compensated for his expert, quote-unquote, opinion at $200 an hour. So that's the cost of this man's integrity, is $200 an hour, folks. Colonel Tucker, a former commander of the Corps Regimental Combat Team 7 that fought in the 2004 Battle of Fallujah, filed expert testimony in Rupp v. Bonta, the case that California's Attorney General Robert Bonta is desperately trying to keep California's assault weapon ban alive. That case was originally filed in 2017. In June of last year, the U.S. District Court's order was vacated by U.S. Courts of Appeal for the Ninth Circuit and remanded back to the District Court, given the U.S. Supreme Court's Bruin decision, which expressly forbids the court from using an interest balancing test to decide constitutionality of Second Amendment-related cases. Justice Clarence Thomas expressly forbids the practice in Bruin, writing in the majority opinion, the Second Amendment is the very product of an interest balancing by the people, and it surely elevates above all other interests the right of law-abiding responsible citizens to use arms for self-defense. Attorney General Bonta is scrambling to salvage what's left of California's unconstitutional ban on the most popular selling semi-automatic rifle in America. There are over 24.4 million of these rifles, AR-15s and AK-47s, in circulation today. They discharge one cartridge for each pull of the trigger, no different than popular semi-automatic duck hunting shotguns or personal defense handguns. Colonel Tucker argues that these are firearms only meant for military use. I'm not writing to impugn the colonel's character. Like him, I've served in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. I carried the M4, firing the 5.56mm cartridge. I own several MSRs chambered to accept .223 Remington /5.56 and 6.5 Creedmoor ammunition. Like him, I've got extensive experience with the Colt 1911 .45 caliber handgun, as well as multiple handguns chambered for 9mm, including Beretta's M9. The facts he presents to the court, however, are verifiably false. Mythical M4 and 5.56. Colonel Tucker qualified MSRs as assault weapons based on California's list of cosmetic characteristics that have nothing to do whatsoever with the rifle's actual functions. He testifies that the selector switch that renders an M4 capable of automatic fire is a picayune or petty or worthless difference. By that definition, Colonel Tucker would classify any semi-automatic firearm as a weapon of war. But he goes further. A single round is capable of severing the upper body from the lower body or decapitation. The round is designed to kill, not wound, and both the AR-15 and M4 contain barrel rifling to make the round tumble upon impact and cause more severe injury. Let me repeat what this freaking idiot said. Listen, this man obviously is a college-educated individual. He's a former officer, former colonel in the United States Marine Corps. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to weapons. He's not stupid. So the only thing I can assume here is that he is nothing more than an absolute bought and paid for whore of a liar. Listen to this again. A single round is capable of severing the upper body from the lower body or decapitation. The round is designed to kill, not wound, and both the AR-15 and M4 contain barrel rifling to make the round tumble upon impact and cause more severe injury. Rifling is to make the round tumble, folks. I'm not doubting the Colonel's combat acumen. I certainly can't say that's what I saw in combat. I never witnessed a single .556 round fired at the enemy decapitate or sever a human body in half. If this were true of the .556 cartridge, it would beg the question of why the military is spending millions to move to the 6.8 millimeter next generation squad weapon, using a heavier caliber that carries more kinetic energy downrange. It would also beg the question of why the military also uses 7.62x51, 300 Winchester Magnum, 338 Lapua Magnum, and 50 caliber BMG ammunition. If the .556 cartridge was that devastating, there would clearly be no additional need for heavier bullets with more gunpowder behind them. I've killed coyotes and prairie dogs with both .556 and .223 Remington. Nothing of what Colonel Tucker describes ever happened on those much smaller targets. In fact, in my home state, the .223 .556 isn't considered powerful enough for an ethical harvest of white-tailed deer. Rifling stocks and grips. The rifle barreling remark is odd too, especially coming from an infantry officer. I've studied firearms, and it's common knowledge that rifling is designed to improve accuracy by stabilizing the bullet in flight as it travels toward the target, not to make it tumble upon impact. Artillery tubes have rifling for the same reason. Colonel Tucker's military expertise isn't done, though. He claims that pistol grips and adjustable stocks on rifles are especially deadly. It is my opinion, based on my military service, that these features, individually and in combination, make semi-automatic rifles more lethal and more useful in combat settings, as described in more detail below, Colonel Tucker testified. Those are also the same features that allow for greater control and more accuracy when firing. That's safer shooting. The adjustable stock makes it so my wife can fit the same MSR to her body that I fit to mine, with minor adjustments at the length of the stock. Adjusting stocks to be customized to the shooter is not a new concept. Rifle and shotgun shooters have been doing it forever. This isn't the first time Colonel Tucker's taken on lawful firearm ownership. He co-authored an article in 2017 with 2 other Marines, one of whom I personally served with in the Corps. The column attacked the NRA for what they termed as engaging in shameless fear tactics. They added, "We believe that all of our civil liberties are worth defending for all Americans, including protection from the use of excessive lethal force by those sworn to protect and serve our communities." That's all rights, except the full spectrum of Second Amendment rights, apparently. Full semi-automatic. It's not the first time military officers used rank to present themselves as an authority on firearms. Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling did this with CNN following the tragedies in Parkland, Florida, where he explained to a reporter that he was going to fire on full semi-automatic. That was lampooned, not just because of the ill turn of phrase, but because of the intentional narrative twisting. Military officers are using their former ranks to tell the American public they can't be trusted to possess commonly owned and commonly used firearms. I'm proud of my service. I'm proud of the Marines I served with, including Marines like Colonel Tucker, with whom I passionately disagree on this issue. The American public should be keenly aware that the U.S. military is very good at what it does. That's control. That control, however, should never be extended on the American public, especially when it is presented as expert testimony that is dubious at best and verifiably false at worst. The American public generally respects and admires military leaders, but we should not be blinded to the facts by military brass. Apparently, at $200 an hour, California is getting a steal on this testimony and Second Amendment rights. I find this officer's testimony to be egregious, to be horrible, to be disgusting, to be dishonorable, to be nothing but an all-out pack of lies, and he should be ashamed. Frankly, I think he should be prosecuted for perjury because the things he said are demonstrably false, outright lies. What do you think, folks? Is this a well-intentioned but mistaken presentation by this gentleman, or is this an outright lie by a morally corrupt whore whose honor and truth is for sale? Let me know in the comments below and in the chat. Warsaw says he's definitely lying and over-exaggerated. Salad helps, Mike. Yeah, I eat bacon salad all the time. Let's see. Yep, no one's out there saying anything about this other than Bud, yeah, Tactical Fud, aka Buck, says it's a lie. Warsaw, lie. Scott 79, option 2, it's a lie. Lies, damn lies. The only thing better would have been statistics, right? Yeah. As I said, this guy nearly made it into Moron of the Week because the things he said were just so damn stupid. Speaking of so damn stupid.
Now prepare yourself for another tale of stupidity in this episode of Moron of the Week.
All right, folks, first up in Moron of the Week is this piece from the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Maryland lawmakers want sci-fi technology to track your guns in real time, by Larry Keene. Someone needs to figure out what in the wide world of dystopian Buck Rogers in the 25th century sci-fi fantasy world is going on in Maryland's legislature. Anti-gun lawmakers there are advancing legislation that would require firearm manufacturers to attach RFID trackers to each and every firearm so government officials could track their whereabouts at all times. Not only is this a clear invasion of privacy rights and constitutional protections against illegal search and seizure, this is an idea that's not even technologically possible. This is the stuff of Hollywood and anti-gun politicians that don't understand the first thing about firearms or manufacturing processes. Maryland's Delegate Pam Queen introduced HB 704, a bill entitled Firearms Tracking Technology. The bill's description reads, prohibiting a person from engaging in certain bulk firearm transfer unless each firearm that is part of the transfer contains a certain embedded tracker, requiring a seller or other transferor who engages in a bulk firearms transfer to transmit to the Secretary of State Police certain information, providing that a violation of the act is a civil offense and is subject to a fine of up to $2,500, and requiring the Secretary to establish a certain database to store information about each bulk firearm transfer in the state. The embedded tracker would be required to be fixed to the firearm frame or receiver, emit unique tracking information, and not be readily capable of being removed, disabled, or destroyed without rendering the firearm inoperable or destroying the frame or receiver. To be clear, Delegate Queen would require the embedded tracker to emit this unique information to Maryland State Police for permanent storage in a state-run database. Anyone not complying with this is subject to $2,500 in fine. So there we go, folks. We have a state lawmaker in Maryland. I'm not going to go read the whole rest of this. We have a state lawmaker in Maryland who is trying to mandate impossible, non-existent, impractical technology that would create a firearms database and be an unconstitutional violation of the prohibitions against search and seizure without a warrant. So, yeah, that's sure. So, Maryland, I had a word that I was going to use here, but I just can't. Let's just call them Maryland lawmakers. They're the first contestants on Moron of the Week. But wait, there is more. Because Keith Olbermann, well, I will allow him to say it in his words. This is from Breitbart. Let me go on down here to Keithy Keith. You guys can listen to this yourself. This is from a tweet by that idiot.
We are owned by guns, and therefore there is only one way to stop the mass shootings. It is to suffocate the businesses that make billions of dollars in profits off guns, to destroy the gun lobby, the death lobby, and the Republican Party that defends those lobbies and those businesses. And the only way to do that is an economic civil war. The blue states have all the money. They must starve the red states into submission, or another 600,000 Americans will be murdered in the next 10 to 12 years. That and more in the Wednesday Countdown podcast, available now wherever you podcast.
There you have it, folks. Starve you of money. No one from the liberal states should do business with anyone in the conservative states and just starve you to death. But, you know what? The conservative states, by and large, are the breadbasket of this country and the ones that produce all the food. So, yeah, go ahead. I'm your Huckleberry. How about we just literally starve you into submission? I mean, this goes both ways. Economic civil war, Keith. What an idiot. So Keith Olbermann is contestant number 2 on Moron of the Week. But wait, oh wait, there's more. This is from firearmsnews.com. This is Radical Oregon ruling declares defense of Second Amendment racist and anti-Semitic. Or Semitic. I really don't know how to pronounce that word. I'm kind of ashamed, but yeah. Anti-Semitic. By David Codrea. Local governments in Oregon can't declare themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries and ban police from enforcing certain gun laws, a state appeals court decided Wednesday in the first court case filed over a concept that hundreds of U.S. counties have adopted in recent years. The state court of appeals ruled that it violates a law giving the state power to regulate firearms. The report elaborates. The ordinance would effectively, if found, create a patchwork quilt of firearms laws in Oregon, or firearms regulations that applied in some counties would not apply in Columbia County, something lawmakers specifically wanted to avoid. That's almost funny. Attacking state preemption to be able to impose just such a patchwork quilt of restrictions, making it impossible for gun owners to legally navigate from one place to another, is exactly what the gun prohibitionists have been trying to do with varying degrees of success. Case in point is Colorado, now one of 8 states that allow local governments to pass gun ordinances that are tighter than state restrictions, per governing.com. Lawmakers in other states are looking to follow Colorado and repeal their own preemption laws. The citizen disarmament lobby not only bellows about home rule for counties and municipalities when preemption blocks their attempts to infringe. At the same time, the effort continues to impose gun bans at the federal level, binding on the whole country. So, let's see, let's skip down to this paragraph. Judge calls Second Amendment protection laws racist and anti-Semitic. Oregon Firearms Federation advises its members in an alert. That's neither editorializing nor hyperbole on OFF's part. That's all done by Oregon Court of Appeals Judge James Egan in his 10-page concurrence for Columbia County v. State of Oregon. Intervenors come before this court and reference UN mandates, which is a well-documented trope meant to invoke white supremacist, anti-Semitic fear of a takeover of our country by outsiders and minorities who are manipulated by an elite class of supervillains, Egan wrote. The Columbia County Ordinance, and by implication all Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions throughout the Republic, has anti-Semitic and racist origins, he declares. So, the premise of such writings is the anti-Semitic and racist conspiracy theory that Jews are at the heart of America's problems, that people of color are unwitting pawns to be manipulated by one side or the other, and that zealots must prepare for a final battle in the last days. What appears to be a spittle-flecked rant masked as legal opinion continues. The proponents of these ideas claim that a cabal of elites or globalists, code words for Jews, in the UN or the fictional New World Order or Zionist occupational government manipulate our federal government and, by extension, state governments. These ideas are, of course, nothing new, unique, or intelligent. They are, instead, just a rehashing of the ancient trope of a secret Jewish government. They are the retelling of a lie that led to the murder of over 6 million Jews within living memory. So, this janky judge says that if you want to defend the Second Amendment, you're one of those whack job conspiracy theorists who thinks the Jews want to take over everything, and therefore you're a racist and anti-Semitic person because you dare to want to protect your constitutionally guaranteed rights. So Janky Judge is the next contestant in Moron of the Week. But wait, oh wait! There's one more, because President Snifford is the gift that keeps on giving. This is from Breitbart. Biden pushes universal background checks, assault weapons ban following MSU attack. President Joe Biden released a statement Tuesday on the Michigan State University attack, and he called for an assault weapons ban, a high-capacity magazine ban, universal background checks, and myriad other gun controls. The type of firearm used in the MSU attack has not yet been reported by police, which we find out later were 9mm pistols, not a quote-unquote assault weapon, nor has the means by which the attacker acquired said gun. And since this was written, found out that he legally purchased his firearms. Biden noted the MSU attack occurred one day before the 5th anniversary of the Parkland High School shooting, saying, "The fact that this shooting took place the night before this country marks 5 years since the deadly shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, should cause every American to exclaim enough and demand that Congress take action. As I said in my State of the Union address last week, Congress must do something and enact common-sense gun law reforms, including requiring background checks on all gun sales," which this guy passed, banning assault weapons, which this wasn't, and high-capacity magazines, which are standard-capacity magazines, closing loopholes in our background check system, in other words, not allowing private transfers, requiring safe storage of guns, telling you what you got to do in your own house, and eliminating immunity for gun manufacturers who knowingly put weapons of war on our streets. In other words, allow frivolous lawsuits against manufacturers for selling a legally made, a legally sold product that is to do with the exercise of a constitutionally enumerated right. Hold gun manufacturers responsible for the actions of criminals, right? Action is what we owe to those grieving today in Michigan and across America. Or, maybe we should take steps to provide some real solutions. But El Sniffador is the last contestant on Moron of the Week. So, let me go ahead and put this poll in here, folks, so that you guys can vote and let me know what you think. If you're here on the podcast, go ahead and send me an email. Let me know who you think should have been the Moron of the Week. That's mike@mkoutdoorjournal.com. You can send me that email. If you are watching this on a replay on YouTube, sound off in the comments below and let me know who you think. And if you're here, vote. So Looney Lawmakers is the first contestant. I should have done this ahead of time, but I, didn't. Kooky Keith Olbermann is the second. The Janky Judge is the third. And they're the sniffer in chief. Those are your pardon me. Those are your choices, folks. Looney Lawmakers, Kooky Keith, Janky Judge, or the sniffer in chief. Who should be Moron of the Week? Let's see what's been saying out in the chat. Ozzy says that guy's a disgrace to the Marines, should lose his pension. I know you would have, Rob, blah, blah, blah. Definitely Ozzy 100%. What Maryland is doing is in violation of 10th to 14th. First it was engraving, cast with stamping, now this garbage. Keith, you've forgotten that this is USA. What you're proposing is a violation of many things. Starve you into submission like food control, a.k.a. the Holodomor. Olbermann will be hard to beat, says Ozzy. Sounds like Keith Olbermann wants a civil war. He's deranged. So does this man this mean we can use this ruling to go after sanctuary cities that are in violation of federal law? Bet he won't volunteer to be on the front line. Keith has always been a fool. MSU massacre was a handgun. Sniffer more than anything. This poll is hard to pick. Yeah, I know. I try to do that deliberately. It's always the American public for allowing this crap, but 3 works. See, who do we have here? 9% for loony lawmakers, 33% for Kooky Keith, 8% for Janky Judge, 50% for Sniffer in Chief. And we have 12 votes out there, folks. We got 19 people viewing, so if you haven't voted, sound off and let your voice be heard. Let me know what you think. Should it be the Maryland lawmakers for wanting the RFID chips? Should it be Keith Olbermann for calling for an economic civil war? Should it be the Janky Judge for saying that you are a racist and anti-Semitic if you are anti-Semitic? I got to find out how to pronounce that word correctly. You're anti-Jew if you want to defend, your constitutionally protected rights. And then Sniffer in Chief for ban assault weapons now. Because so far it looks like, as usual, El Sniffer's winning, which he usually does. I actually can't think of any time that he's been in this that he hasn't won. Because he's a damn tool. So we're going to go ahead and call it, folks. Joseph R. Biden, you are the right of the people's moron of the week.
And there we had another tale of stupidity in this week's episode of Moron of the Week.
Alrighty, folks, and here we go to Roll Call 219's favorite segment, self-defense shoutouts. For those of you who are new or who have never stuck around to the end, self-defense shoutouts are not where I'm reveling in the prospect of the bad guy winning the room temperature challenge by taking a dirt nap. It's where I'm instead reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to keep the bad guy from making him do that very thing. First up is this piece from KMOV. Man kills would-be robber at St. Louis gas station, police say. This is from February 15th. St. Louis, Missouri. A man shot and killed the person who tried to rob him at a gas station just north of downtown St. Louis Wednesday, police told News 4. St. Louis police said a man was shot and killed by his would-be robbery victim at the Zoom gas station near the intersection of Tucker and O'Fallon just after 6 a.m. Wednesday. During a press conference earlier in the day, police said they were originally called to the scene for a carjacking. Both people involved had guns, but police say the deceased person is the suspect. They say he's a black man in his 20s who has not been identified. Police say the original robbery victim was a 48-year-old white man. We recommend that everyone be aware of their surroundings, take their key fobs with them while they're at the gas stations because there has been somewhat of a spike in these types of incidents citywide, Captain Pierre Benoist said. The gas station was filled with people throughout Wednesday, many unaware that the shooting even took place. Jamie Faulkner is a frequent customer to the station who says increased patrols are needed in the area. When are we going to get some help out here? Faulkner said. You making citizens and people defend themselves. Unfortunately, this is what comes about. Well, sir, I would say you have the right to defend yourself, and frankly, the police don't have the obligation or duty to defend you. They're there to clean up and try and figure out who did it, not stop it while it happens. That's up to you. You are your own first responder. You are responsible for your own safety. So take responsibility for it. Next up is this piece from actionnewsjax.com. 67-year-old Interlaken woman shoots and kills armed intruder. Interlaken, Florida. Putnam County Sheriff's Office said a 67-year-old woman shot and killed a man they said forced his way into her home with a gun. The man was identified as 64-year-old Reginald Best. According to the police report, the 67-year-old said she heard the door handle shaking around 3:30 a.m. Wednesday morning and grabbed a gun to see what was going on. She told deputies she thought it could have been her husband because he works late, odd hours. The report says she opened the door and Best forced his way in with a gun. She told him to leave several times, but he wouldn't and kept saying, "They're after me." She told deputies he raised his arms with the revolver in his hands and believed the hammer was cocked. In fear for her life, she shot him. The woman then called 911 and he was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. You absolutely have the right to defend yourself in that particular scenario, Putnam County Sheriff Gator DeLoach told Action News Jax. The sheriff said the woman was also at home with her 90-year-old mother with Alzheimer's. Had she not had the firearm, we might be investigating a double homicide, he said. Apparently, he also said that she did the neighborhood a favor and that it's a safer place now that she shot this guy. So, what do you expect from a guy nicknamed Gator, right? Last, but most certainly not least, from NWAOnline.com, homeowner shoots burglar, police say. A Jacksonville resident shot at people who police said were trying to burglarize his home Wednesday afternoon, wounding one, according to news release from Jacksonville Police. Officers arriving at 616 Carpenter Drive around 1:45 p.m. following a report of a residential burglary in progress were informed of a person suffering from a gunshot wound in the same area, eventually determined to be part of the same incident. The homeowner, who was not identified, had fired his weapon at the people attempting to burglarize his residence, striking one of them, police said. The wounded man, who was also not identified, was taken to an area hospital and was in stable condition. Thursday evening. She expected that he would be charged once released, but did not have details. Police also arrested Kylan Brown, who faces charges of residential burglary and tampering with physical evidence, the release states. So, there you go, folks. Despite what the lamestream legacy media would have you believe, good guys with guns stop bad guys with guns all the time. Let me go back out to the chat one final time here this evening, see what you guys are talking about. Ozzy says that Moron of the Week is his favorite segment. Well, I'm glad you like it, Ozzy. I like it too. I think it's funny. Between it and self-defense shoutouts, yeah. I really like the two of those. Not that I don't like the other stuff. The other stuff's important, the main segment, but I enjoy those two. One because it's just asinine and absurd. The other because, well, I find people who are defending themselves against bad guys to be a very heartening thing. I love it. Buck says that Jacksonville is 10 miles from me. Wow. All right, folks. That's it, It's time to sweep the floors and shut the doors. I want to say thank you for being here for this, particularly those of you who stuck around for this dumpster fire since it started. I as always, I have to leave you with this, folks. Make sure that you contact your Congress critters and elected representatives and let them know what you think. Send them a snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, carrier pigeon, bicycle messenger, semaphore, heliograph, anything that you have to do to let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll see you guys on the next one.